The Iberian Peninsula is typically associated with Spain, Portugal, and Andorra. But many people forget there's also a small piece of land at the very southern tip of Spain that belongs to Britain, Gibraltar. A tiny yet vital territory, Gibraltar seems oddly placed under British control. So naturally, it raises a big question. Why does Britain own Gibraltar, and why isn't it a part of Spain? To answer that, we need to go back to the early 1700s. The Spanish monarch at the time, King Charles II, died without an heir. In his will, he designated Philip V, the grandson of French King Louis XIV, as his successor. That didn't sit well with the rest of Europe. The idea of Spain and France forming a political alliance under a single powerful dynasty was alarming to powers like Britain, the Dutch Republic, and the Holy Roman Empire. This disagreement sparked the War of the Spanish Succession, a conflict that would alter Europe's borders and balance of power. As the war progressed, the Anglo-Dutch forces targeted Gibraltar. In 1704, they seized the territory, and although Spain tried to retake it, their efforts failed. The war eventually ended with the Treaty of Utrecht in 1713, which officially ceded Gibraltar to Britain in exchange for peace. Though the treaty clearly stated Gibraltar would be British, Spain was never truly at peace with the arrangement. Over the 18th century, Spain launched 2 more military attempts to recover Gibraltar. The second came during the American Revolutionary War, when Britain was distracted by conflict across the Atlantic. Yet once again, Spain failed. Meanwhile, the population of Gibraltar was becoming increasingly British. As the original Spanish inhabitants fled inland, new settlers from the British Empire established their lives in the territory. Over time, a unique Gibraltarian identity began to take shape, more aligned with Britain than Spain. By the late 18th century, Spain had lost territories like Florida, and with limited bargaining power, it could no longer afford to insist on reclaiming Gibraltar. Still, Spanish leaders never stopped asserting that Gibraltar was rightfully theirs. As the 19th century rolled on, Gibraltar's strategic importance only grew. It served as a valuable naval base during the Napoleonic Wars and again during the Crimean War. The opening of the Suez Canal in 1869 elevated Gibraltar's value even further, making it a vital stop for British ships en route to Asia and Africa. Spain, however, maintained its stance that Gibraltar should be returned. Tensions rose again during the Spanish Civil War in the 1930s. The British closed the land border with Spain and strengthened the territory's military infrastructure, including building an airbase in what was considered neutral territory. These moves only deepened Spanish resentment. When Francisco Franco came to power in Spain, he made it his mission to reclaim Gibraltar. During World War II, Adolf Hitler even offered Franco a deal. Join the Axis powers, and in return, Germany would help Spain seize Gibraltar. To many people's surprise, Franco refused. Though he desperately wanted Gibraltar, he knew the cost of joining the war on the side of the Nazis could be disastrous for Spain. Back in Gibraltar, the war was taking its toll. Much of the civilian population was evacuated, and the town was used as a major British base. In a bizarre twist, the French Air Force bombed Gibraltar in 1940, retaliating for a prior British attack on their fleet in North Africa. Even after the war, Gibraltar remained firmly under British control. Franco's efforts to claim it diplomatically went nowhere. But as decolonization swept across the globe, some began to question why Britain still held onto a piece of land so far from its own shores. The answer came in 1967, when Britain held a referendum in Gibraltar. Residents were asked whether they wanted to stay British or become Spanish. The outcome was astonishing. Over 12,000 voted to remain British, and just 44 supported Spain. Franco was furious, but the people had spoken. Later, in 2002, Britain and Spain explored the idea of shared sovereignty, allowing both nations to govern Gibraltar together. This proposal was also put to a referendum. Again, the people of Gibraltar overwhelmingly rejected it. Over 99% voted no. Even during the Brexit saga in the 2010s, when the majority of Gibraltarians voted to remain in the European Union, they still had no desire to shift allegiance to Spain. The reason why is simple. They are British. After more than 300 years under British rule, Gibraltarians have developed their own identity. It's not Spanish, Asking them to return to Spain is like asking modern-day Americans to become a British colony again. It just doesn't make sense. On top of that, most of Gibraltar's current population has no cultural or familial ties to Spain. The Spanish residents fled centuries ago. So, there's no emotional reason to go back and no practical benefit either. Twice, the people have voted. Twice, they've said they want to remain British. That's democracy. And unless Spain wants to go to war with Britain, a scenario that's incredibly unlikely, Gibraltar will remain British. The idea of Spain launching a military campaign over one small territory is simply not realistic today. In conclusion, Britain still owns Gibraltar because of the Treaty of Utrecht, because of failed Spanish attempts to reclaim it, and most importantly, because the people of Gibraltar have consistently chosen to remain under British rule. Despite Spain's long-standing desire to reclaim the territory, every peaceful opportunity they've had has been rejected by the very people they hope to govern. In a modern, democratic world,